Oh, Charles, yeah, he has his surgery the 18th, is it? She shrugs her shoulders. I don't know. So we hope that he is able to get cleared by his cardiologist, and that way he can get sent back down to Dallas and get that aortic aneurysm taken care of in his abdomen. That's a lot of A's. Aortic aneurysm in the abdomen. So we'll continue to pray for Charles as well. All right, we are in the book of Acts. We are in the 23rd chapter, and we got all the way down through verse 5. If you remember, he was in the temple, created the folks, the other Jews in the temple mistakenly thought that he brought, or on purpose, one or the other, said that he brought a Gentile into the temple, and so they started a riot, and they dragged the Roman tribune, the Roman centurions, and the guards came and dragged him down to the barracks, and he was in front of the barracks, and then on the next day, the tribune wanted to figure out exactly what was going on, and so now he's in front of the Sanhedrin, and if you remember last week, the high priest ordered him to be struck, and so Paul calls him a whitewashed wall, and we talked a little bit about that. And then towards at the end, we have verse 5. I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. So, here we are. He's in front of the Sanhedrin. Now, here's a very interesting set of text. We see some of the shrewdness that Paul has. I'll start in verse 6. Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other part Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Brothers, I'm a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead, I am on trial. Now, when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided, for the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. All right, so there's the difference. Pharisees and Sadducees. The Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection, don't believe in the spirit, don't believe in angels. That's why they're so sad, you see? Oh, man, that fell flat. All right. And the Pharisees, if you want to talk about it, it's not fair, you see? Anyway, so the Pharisees believe in the resurrection and angels, and the Sadducees don't. And so Paul, in his shrewd understanding of the political atmosphere that he's in the Sanhedrin, understands it's a mix of Sadducees and Pharisees. So what does he do? He plays on that. And he says, I'm a Pharisee. First of all, he aligns himself with one of the groups, right? I'm a Pharisee, the son of Pharisees. I'm sorry, is that what he said? I'm a Pharisee, the son of Pharisees, right? And then he mentions the divide. And it's with respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I stand here before you. So he immediately creates a divide in the room. Okay, immediately. And we're going to read a little bit more because we're going to see how that divide plays out. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended sharply. We find nothing wrong in this man. What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him? And when the dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him away from among them by force and bring him into the barracks. Now, who is Paul in front of? Pharisees and Sadducees, right? Now let's get a macro view. Who are the Pharisees and Sadducees in reference to Israel? They're the spiritual leaders, right? Those are the folks that are the spiritual leaders of Israel who are supposed to be extreme, especially if you're a Pharisee, you are an adherent to the Mosaic law, to the letter. You tithe what you're supposed to tithe. If we go back to Matthew 23 and 24, Jesus actually gets on their case, you know. You tithe your mint, your cumin, and I forget what the other one is. but you forget the weightier matters of the law, like mercy and justice. So they're very much law keepers, right? Very much. And so Paul aligns himself with the Pharisees and the law keepers versus the Sadducees. And now tell me again what the Roman tribune was afraid of. He's afraid they were going to do what to Paul? Tear him to pieces. The leaders, the spiritual leaders of Israel are violent, and they're going to hurt they're going to hurt an Israelite, a Pharisee, with no trial, with no charge, with nothing. Do we not see that today? In our political parties, as they war with one another, they have no concern for the laws of this country. They only have concern for their own power and their own prestige. And you can see it every time somebody picks up a microphone and begins to talk. And I don't care what letters after your name, D, R, or I, it doesn't matter to me. Everybody falls into the same trap. So it's not new. The spiritual leaders of Israel. Now the difference is our representatives are not our spiritual leaders. So if we wanted to really get down and have a good comparison, that would be like our two elders fighting amongst each other and getting violent with each other. And if I was the object of that, they would want to hurt me. That is a good comparison. Is that what a true leader, a true shepherd, a true high priest of Israel would do? Matter of fact, what did Paul say just before that? The high priest ordered him to be struck, and what did Paul say? Don't worry about the whitewash. I'm not worried about the whitewash. What did he say? You order somebody to be struck contrary to the law, right? God is going to strike you, verse 3, you whitewashed wall, are you sitting to judge me according to the law, yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck. So already, before we even get to this point, we can see and realize that the leaders of Israel are not really concerned for the law. The Pharisees, who are law keepers, are not concerned for the law. That's a very sad state of affairs for Israel. The following night, verse 11, the Lord stood by him and said, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome. All right. Paul has his mission in front of him, doesn't he? Here's the mission. You needed to get to Israel so you could testify me before Jerusalem or before the Israelites. That's happened. Now you've got to get to Rome. Paul has his mission. It's set in front of him. And everything that happens from here on out, we have to remember that's Paul's motive. I've got to get to Rome. God tells me that's where I have to go. And that's going to color everything Paul does. All right? Now, if we go back for a half a second, because remember, we're looking at this through unity. Verse 8, the Sadducees say there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit. That's interesting. Now, in my Bible, this is a lowercase s, but it's the same word. So only in context can you tell whether they're talking about man's spirit or the Holy Spirit, right? But plainly, what does Paul tell us there's one of in Ephesians 4? One body, one spirit. Plainly. Right? But here we have a sect of Israelites that don't believe in the Spirit. Let's go back to the Old Testament. A lot of the times, really open-ended question, I hope I can lead you in the right direction. A lot of the times we read the Spirit does what for people? Like, let's give an example. Let's give Samson. What did the Spirit do for Samson? Gave him strength, right? Right in the end, when Delilah had cut his hair, and he had his eyes gouged out, and he's chained to the pillars in this Philistine building, what does the Spirit do? Rushed in on him, he gave him strength, and he was able to yank the pillars and bring the whole building down, right? We read about that over and over and over again in the Old Testament, how the Spirit rushes in on people and gives them the ability to do something extraordinary. In the New Testament, who gives the people the ability to heal miraculously, or the ability to speak in foreign languages, or the ability to do whatever? Who gives that? The Spirit, right? So the Spirit is playing a role here, but yet the Sadducees say there is no Spirit, there is no angel, there is no resurrection, there is no angel. Wow. Who did Moses contend with? But because that's not an angel. But Moses contended with someone not Moses. The angel contended. Sorry? Well, actually, I'm talking the book of Jude. Jacob wrestled with an angel. Thank you very much. But in Jude, was it Gabriel or Michael that contended with? Let me get there. Sorry. Jude. Yeah, for Moses' bones. There it is. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce blasphemous judgment. So, and my point here is angels. The Sadducees don't believe in angels, but all throughout the Old Testament, who met Abraham at the oak tree at Mamre? It wasn't only God, but who was with him? There was 3 people, right? Angels were with him, right? So it's all over the Old Testament. So I'm not sure exactly where the Sadducees are getting their information and how they're working with it. Maybe that's why they're so sad, you see. Didn't work the second time either. That's okay. It's okay. For your benefit, there will not be a third time. All right. Let's begin at verse 12, unless there's some questions. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath to neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now therefore you, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes near." I want to go back to this whole idea of the law of Moses, right? Under the law of Moses, what happens to somebody that's not been accused? Are they sentenced to death? How do you accuse somebody? How do you bring charges to somebody, against somebody under the law of Moses? Two or more witnesses, right? Absolutely. And then there's a trial, is there not? They did that with Jesus, even though that was a sham. But here, we have a group of people who have said, we are going to murder Paul. Right? That's basically what they said. And they go to the chief priests and the Pharisees, and they say, join us in this conspiracy so that we can murder Paul. By the way, what's one of the 10 Commandments? You shall not murder. Absolutely. So these 40 plus people who have taken this oath bound themselves, and then they pulled the Sanhedrin in and said, let us work outside the law to murder this person. Now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, Take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, and he has something to tell you. The tribune took him by the hand and going aside, asked him privately, what is it that you have to tell me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they're going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for they have more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath to neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. Now they're ready and waiting for your consent. So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, tell no one that you have informed me of these things. So, who's looking out for Paul? What did God tell Paul? You've got to get where? To Rome. So is God going to let some 40 guys making a conspiracy with the Sanhedrin, is that going to stop him? Of course not. And I think it's interesting, we have a little insight here. We have Paul's sister's son. I thought, ooh, that's a neat little insight, because we don't get a lot of that, do we? Then he called two of the centurions and said, get ready, 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the third hour of the night. Okay, the third hour of the night. About what time do you know? About 9, right. Right. You know, sunrise at 6, sunset at 6 p.m., and so you go 3 hours into the evening, and so we're right around 9 o'clock in the evening. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor, and he wrote a letter to this effect. I'll read the letter in just a second. But let's add up how many people are here. All right? There's 40 men that have taken an oath to kill Paul. Right? 40 men. How many Romans are there? Well, there's 200 soldiers. 470. 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen. 470. Do you think that Rome kind of says, if there's 40 of you, we're going to 10 times that, right? Now remember, I know it's kind of hard sometimes to fathom this, but let's go back to the garden for a second. When Jesus is praying in the garden, right? And then finally the people show up, and the Bible tells us there was a cohort. Okay? Do you remember how many people a cohort is in the Roman army?
About 600.
600 people. Not counting the Jews, because I'm sure there were some temple soldiers there from the Jews. There was probably another rabble there. Judas was with them. So we have minimum 600 plus people to come get Jesus. And some people would fuss at me and say, oh no, it really wasn't that much. It wasn't that much. It was just like a squad of soldiers. They just called it a cohort. But that's not how the Romans do things, is it? To protect one person from 40, they send 470. So it is not out of bounds to think to go arrest one with his loyal disciples that they wouldn't bring an entire 600-man cohort. Right? Now let's read the letter to this effect that was written. Claudius Lysias to His Excellency the Governor Felix. This is the first time we get the tribune's name. Okay, that's another little bit of history that we can go back and match. You know, when Claudius Lysias was the tribune in Jerusalem, right? To His Excellency the Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews, was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. I love the way he opens that up, doesn't he? He opens that right up and says, I did nothing wrong here. This guy's a Roman citizen. It ain't my fault. That's what he's saying.
He's covering himself.
Amen. It's all the Jews' fault. It ain't my fault. Matter of fact, I rescued this guy. This man was seized by the Jews. Oh, I was already there. 28. And desiring to know the charges for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he's being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving of death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against this man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have against him. So, we didn't get that little bit earlier, did we? Claudius Lysias actually went to the Sanhedrin and said, look, if you want to bring charges against this man, you're going to have to go see Felix, the governor. Right? If this is as serious as you want it to be, then you have got to do this the right way, and you've got to bring formal charges against him to Felix, the governor. Now, they're going to Caesarea, right? And Caesarea is up on the coast. It's kind of northwest of Jerusalem. A day or so's ride. It's not too far. It's not all that close. But really, now Lysias is going to find out exactly how serious the Jews are as to whether or not they can send a delegation up to bring charges against Paul. 31. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by the night to Antipatris? Anyway, that word, or that city. And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horses and men go with them. When they had come to Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from, and when he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So, effectively, Paul's in jail until when? Until the accusers arrive, right? So everything is now left up to the Israelites who accused him of, and basically their accusation stems from he let a Gentile into the temple, which he did not, right? So there is no real accusation that has any merit to it. They're going to come and they're going to try and accuse him of speaking against Moses and things like that. But that's why I think we go back to Paul in front of the Sanhedrin, and what did he tell them he was? And what are Pharisees? Law keepers. Strict adherent to the law of Moses.
And where he was put was not really prison.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Herod's house.
The praetorium, right. So almost kind of like a house arrest, right?
Motel.
Holiday Inn or Marriott?
Whichever one's nice. And then he gets all his food free and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in essence, and I'm going to let this out now, God gives Paul a free trip to Rome. Paul doesn't have to spend any money now. I don't know if that was worth it, considering what he's about to go through, but God obviously thinks it was, and sends him on his way. All meals, board, food, travel, all paid for. All right. After 5 days, the high priest, verse 1, chapter 24, Ananias came down with some elders and a spokesman, one Tertullius, and they laid before the governor their case against Paul. And when he had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, since through you we enjoy much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation in every way and everywhere, we accept this with all gratitude. You not chuckle at that? I chuckle at that. I chuckle at that because what is he doing? Is it not the same thing Lysias did when he sent the letter to Felix? Same exact thing. He's schmoozing. I call it schmoozing. He's schmoozing. He's sidling himself up. He's getting up next to Felix, and he's flattering him, trying to get Felix to feel better for him in his case, to rule for him in his favor, right? We think you're a great dude, you're doing great things, basically. But, to detain you no further, verse 4, I beg you in your kindness to hear us briefly. For we have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots among all the Jews throughout the world, and is a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you'll be able to find out from him about everything of which we accuse him. So they accuse him of stirring up riots. But what did the Roman centurion and the Romans have to do? Was it he that stirred up the riot in Jerusalem? Who stirred up the riot in Jerusalem? The Jews did. He didn't speak anything and say, don't follow Moses, follow Jesus. He was in the temple and the Jews stirred up the riot, didn't they? So the accusation is exactly opposite here. All right? The Jews also joined in the charge, affirming that all these things were so. And when the governor had nodded to him to speak, Paul replied. Now, when we read this, I really want us to catch what Paul's doing here. All right? Normally, when you stand up in front of a judge, and the judge has said, okay, explain yourself, what do? You give a defense, don't you? You stand up and you defend your actions, right? You defend what you have done, saying, I didn't do anything wrong. As we read this, I want you to understand what Paul's doing. Paul's not giving a defense. He is not defending himself at all. He is proclaiming the gospel to the governor, Felix. Knowing that for many years you've been a judge over this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. That's funny. You can verify that it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem, and they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in the synagogue or in the city. Neither can they prove to you what they now bring up against me, but this I confess to you. Here we go. Here it is. That according to the way, which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. So I always take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and present an offering. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you and to make an accusation, should they have anything against me. Or else let these men themselves say what wrongdoing they found when I stood before the council. Other than this one thing that I cried out while standing among them, it is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial before you this day. What was Paul admonished for in front of the council? When he stood in front of the council, they admonished him for what? They smacked him, and what did Paul do? Said, you whitewashed wall, right? And then somebody said to him, hey, that's the high priest. You can't do that. And Paul said, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm not supposed to speak wrong or ill of the leaders. They admonished him for that. But what does Paul say? Hey, I did this one thing. Not that I called the high priest a whitewashed wall. I did this one thing. I stood up and I cried out, it is with respect for the resurrection of the dead and that hope. I don't want to get there. Let me read it. It is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial before you this day. That's what Paul thinks he did that caused a fuss.
Right after he made that statement on the Pharisee,
Mm-hmm.
that if they did, they all went toward me.
Amen. They all got violent after that, didn't they? So he doesn't think he did anything wrong when he called the high priest a whitewashed wall, which I think I agree with. And the only thing that he is concerned about is the fact that he caused a division amongst the Sadducees and the Pharisees. So much so that they got violent and 40 men conspired to kill him. Right? Oh, by the way, we're 5 days into their 40-day fast. All right? I just want to keep that. Remember, we're not going to touch food. Not 40-day fast. The 40 people are 5 days into this fast. We're not going to touch food until we kill Paul. All right? But Felix, listen to this. Felix, having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, put them off. And I'm going to stop there. That's so important for us to hear. Felix had a rather accurate knowledge, not of Judaism, not of the Mosaic law. He had a rather accurate knowledge of Christianity. Is that not amazing to you? Where do you think that came from? How did he get this rather accurate knowledge of Christianity? Taking a sip.
The word was spreading.
What happened as the Jews left Jerusalem? Remember, Christians left Jerusalem, and who's the only people that stayed in Jerusalem? The apostles, right? The apostles stayed in Jerusalem, and the Christians left. And as they left, what were they doing? Sharing the gospel, right? Hey, what did Paul do? Paul left Antioch of Syria 3 different times, and he went all throughout Asia and Europe, and what did he do? Share the gospel. What is Asia and Europe? What were they provinces of? Rome. So we think that Felix didn't hear about this?
Cornelius, too.
Cornelius? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not that Felix just heard about it. What do you have to do to have rather accurate knowledge of anything? Study it. You've got to go figure it out, don't you? Hey, I want to have a rather accurate knowledge of chemical engineering. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go see Richard. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go see Richard. Say, Richard, explain to me this. I want to have a rather accurate knowledge of Plainview law enforcement. What am I going to do? I'm going to go see Jeremy. Say, hey, explain to me about this. It's incumbent upon me. He's not going to come to me. Richard's not going to come to me. I'm going to have to go there. So Felix spent some time and effort learning about Christianity. That's important. That's very important in our event that's happening here. Having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, he put them off saying, when Lysias the tribune comes down, I will decide your case. Then he gave orders to the centurion that he should be kept in custody but have some liberty, and that none of his friends should be prevented from attending to his needs. So his house arrest just got a little bit less house arresty, didn't it? He's going to have a little bit of, second bell already, a little bit of leniency, and anybody can come and see him that he wants.